12-year-old Kate's not the most confident kid, but when she and her sister arrive home from school and find the front door open and their parents gone, there's a bottomless hole in their backyard. Well, Kate tries to take charge until she finds herself falling endlessly into the darkness. Welcome to the NOMIES. Author Erik Gingles, The NOMIES and the Surface Protocol. It's your newest book.
Yep.
It's a work of fiction.
Yes.
And as I understand it, it's 18 years in the making. Is that?
Yes.
Is there some semblance of truth to that?
There is some semblance. It started 18 years ago, yes. The genesis of it, the story, yes.
So now people want to know the story. The millions of people watching on the internet right now, Erik, want to know what's the story behind the NOMIES and the Surface Protocol.
Well, it started out as a bedtime story for our three girls when they were around 6, 8, and 10. We had been, or maybe it was 5, 7, and 9, let's say. And we'd been through all the regular books every night and had been reading, and they wanted to have a story where they were the central characters instead of being somebody else. So they asked me to say, can you tell us a story like that? And I said, oh, okay. So I thought for a second, I said, okay. I said, there's an underground civilization that's advanced. Mm-hmm. And every 7 years, they'll open a portal to the surface and then send some advanced scouts to see if the Earth is ready to be taken over by them. But there are some good ones and bad ones, and you girls are able to tell who's who. And they're like, so anyway, it went from there, and it became just a little too complicated. I had too many storylines going on to make up every night, and I got a little lost track. And I'd ask the girls, well, who was that again? They say, oh, that's so-and-so. I said, what did they do? And they, oh, they did this. I'm like, oh, yeah. So it was tough to kind of do it, so I had to kind of put a pin in it, because I just couldn't continue to make it up. And they were a little upset because they were excited actually to do bedtime, because they would hear the story when we did bedtime. And I told my wife, I said, I just can't continue. It's just too much to keep in my head.
So it hits me right away, Erik. You just don't have a captive audience. You have a willing audience. Because
yeah.
From what you're describing, the kids were dying to hear the new version of the story every night.
Oh, yeah. No, they would actually, like I said, say, can we do bedtime now? Because they wanted to hear the story, which was exciting and, fun. Kick for me, but like I said, I just couldn't continue, so I had to put a pause on it, much to their chagrin. And then about 4.5 years ago, I was kind of at I don't want to say a crossroads, but I wanted to reevaluate the direction I was going to go with my career, and I wanted to take a little time and think about it. And in the interim, I thought, well, you know what, there's a couple of stories I had on my to-do list. Mm-hmm. I thought, I'm just going to get to it and write my grandmother's story, which is quite fascinating. But my daughter called quite literally, like 5 minutes me into writing this, and she said, what are you doing? And I told her, and she says, well, that's great. But she says, you know that story. You're forgetting the NOMIES story. Why don't you write that? And I said, you know what? That's a good idea. So I sent she and her sisters an email and said, what do you remember? And I took notes and what I remembered, and then did that.
Here it is.
There it is.
Now, is it fair to say that this is a little bit of Harry Potter meets Alice in Wonderland with maybe Indiana Jones thrown in? I'm trying to, I don't want to.
No.
I don't want to label it, but
right.
Is there a way you can explain what this is about?
It's what it shouldn't be. Now, I have sent this out to numerous, not publishers, but literary agents, which is kind of the way you go now. And for middle grade books, which is the people that would read, like the first Harry Potter book, they want it half the length. It's got to have magic, or it's got to have this, or it's got to have that. And it doesn't have any of that, because that wasn't the story I was telling. And the girls loved the story I was telling. So I thought, I'm going to stay true to form, I'm going to stay true to the story and write the story as it was intended. And it's been really interesting to see the people from all ages are really gravitating towards the story. And I had someone the other day say to me, you know what, this isn't a book I would normally read, but I got it to, for the fundraiser you had. But she says, I loved it. She says, I couldn't put it down. And when it ended, I was disappointed, and I was sad to leave the characters. I was sad to leave the story.
Well, it just hits me now, Erik, and we do these chats in one take and no editing, but it hits me now that if the music industry way back when had the equivalent of the 3-minute hit single, this is like Bohemian Rhapsody meets Stairway to Heaven and the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, no. And
like, it's not the same as everything else.
That's right. And I think that it's more, when you said, what kind of vibe you're getting, it's more like a 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea.
Okay.
It's kind of more of an old-timey sort of fantastical adventure story that's not dated in any way, shape, or form with the language or the technology or anything like that. And I think that's why people from all generations are enjoying it. For younger people, I think they just enjoy the adventure. There's no pressure. You're away from all those things of social media and meanness and society and all kinds of stuff. It's just a good adventure story that's based on family and trying to get back together and save the world.
Which is a noble pursuit these days.
Yeah.
Tell us, beyond what you've already shared, the reaction to the book, especially from your daughters. How do they feel about this, that it's finally out?
Yeah, no, they're really chuffed. They're really chuffed. About a month ago, we had the opportunity to go to Scotland for a family trip, and my youngest, who's in the book, she says, "Now this may sound kind of odd, Dad." She says, "But do you think you could read me some of this when I go to bed?" And I said, "Sure." She's 23, and I said, "Yeah, no problem." And so she said, okay. She got ready for bed. She hopped into bed. She said, "Okay, I'm ready." So I pulled the chair up next to her bed, and I started to read it, and I read it, and I said, "Okay, that's enough for tonight," and closed it. And she had this big smile on her face. Her eyes were closed, and she said, "That's just how I remember it." And that was a good feeling.
What is it about story, in your experience? You were a journalist. You've had a lot of different creative pursuits. But what is it about story that has this magical ability to transport people to another place? Have you ever figured that out?
I don't know what does it, but certainly the story of history has always been told orally before writing forever. And my mother was a librarian at Besborough School here nearby, and that's actually where the story takes place. First line is saying that this is where it starts here, is that a book can carry you 1,000 miles. And I think what's exciting is that in your mind's eye, it creates the best image for you, like rather than a movie. That's why I think people don't, when they read the book, they say, "Oh, the book was better," because the book is better because it's your mind that made that picture with what you saw. And I think having a good read, which is so important for kids' development, but just to be able to be transported with these ideas and these fantasies in your mind, it just kind of takes you away from everything and puts you in a place where you enjoy. And like I said, when a reader says, "I was so sorry to leave that world," you think, that's a good story.
And now the work you do as a chair with Tech Canada, you work with CEO peer advisory groups. How are CEOs any different than little kids looking for a good story to... They themselves want to hear good stories, but also they personify the story they represent to the whole world.
Well, I think a lot of people, a lot of executives or people who have companies or have built companies, it is a story. They don't just is handed a company and says, "Here, there you go, have fun with it." There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of sometimes politics, and sometimes maybe there is a little bit of magic going on. There's a lot of drive, and everyone does have their own story to tell. I think that people can relate to reading a story because they know they've got one too. And certainly with the business owners that I've dealt with in my group, you can tell that the kid is still in there, and you give them the opportunity, it comes out, and their faces light up, and it's good.
The NOMIES and the Surface Protocol. How do people find it, Erik?
Well, they can go to Amazon.ca or Amazon.com, and they can order their copy there.
Erik, it's congratulations, because
Thank you.
it was a long time in the making, 4 years to basically 4.5 years to get it over the final finish line, and looking forward to enjoying the rest of the story. Appreciate you doing this.
Thank you so much, Gare.
Yeah,
Thank
Erik
you.
Gingles, Tech Canada Chair, author of the NOMIES and the Surface Protocol. It's been said you cannot create a legend without a story, and you just might be only one story away from creating your own legend.